I haven't discussed much about my super sport car in a while since I posted the video of it for sale. I've since decided to keep the car and just sell my blue car. So I'll probably be taking that video down or hiding it because of if I do any more work to the car, then of course the price won't reflect. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was how the Carlisle or Bust series of videos was almost a bust. Had this happened anywhere besides where it happened at, I'm not quite sure what I would have done. It would have just taken a lot more doing on my part to try to find one. But this is the fan pulley that was on the car. This is an OE. This is not a reproduction. You can see the pitting right there. It laid out in the rain for a while, so the reason it's rusted. But I wish I'd have kept it in the dry, because what I wanted to show you was this pulley had pitting, and on the inside it was pitted. Well, what had happened was, even though this steel is thick, is the pitting basically penetrated the metal, and in doing so, it weakened it. Now, I had had the air conditioning belt come off a couple times. The alternator belt had come off, and I just couldn't understand why. And I just thought, the belts were the problem, or just a situation to where the it was something else wasn't right. But anyway, so on the way on Wednesday, on our way to Pennsylvania to the Gym Nationals and the 50th anniversary, what all this led up to, and how it almost all come to a crashing halt before it got started, was this pulley. Okay, the alternator belt jumped off at about exit. If you're familiar with I-85 coming through Greenville in the upstate of South Carolina, some of you that see this probably will know where I'm talking about. It jumped off around the Greenville-Spartanburg Airport. So there's a big wide on-ramp coming from the airport, and I jumped over on that and got all the way over on the shoulder, raised the hood. I seen my volt gauge drop to zero. So anyway, I know y'all don't want to stare at a pulley the whole time. So the situation that I was faced with was either, do away, so I seen the belt was off. So I put the belt back on. It lasted about 5 miles and got up to about exit 61, 62 would be, although there is no exit 61 or 2, is mile marker 61, 62. The voltmeter dropped again. Well, as I seen the voltmeter drop and fluctuate a little, which I thought was strange, I heard an explosion. Boom! And I looked out. I expected to see a big dent in the hood or something. It sounded like a rod slung through and hit the pavement. That's what it sounded like. So I pulled over on the road, and I pulled over on the side of the road, and the car was still running. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with the engine. So I was in a very dangerous spot on the interstate. And matter of fact, right on the side of a bridge for a second. And just like, dummy, you can't sit here. So we was about a half a mile from exit 63. So I cranked the car back up and drove it and got off the exit ramp. So when I got off the exit ramp, I got out. The car was I got 2 temperature gauges. They're both just pegged, the factory gauge and the aftermarket. And they were both just pegged, and luckily, it got hot, but it didn't get, I didn't keep driving it, so it was fine. But all my antifreeze, vaporized and whatnot. So I raised the hood, and this is what I saw. So luckily, the belts hadn't jumped off. I mean, the belts had jumped off, but luckily, even the power steering belt was actually still on at the bottom. Luckily, they didn't fall on the interstate because the air conditioning belt is a $30-something belt, and the alternator belt was another $20 belt. So I got to thinking, okay, well, the pulley that I got came from a friend of mine. No fault to him, it could have happened to him. So I called him, and he said, well, he's over about 45 minutes from the shop. So he rushed back to the shop and was actually able to find another pulley. Now, in the meantime, we were 5 miles from a place called Southern Rods and Parts. So I called them up, and they've got a dual pulley, plenty of them. So my grandpa was in his car, so we went over there and got a chrome pulley and come back and got the car running again. I had brought 2 gallons of water with me, or a gallon, I can't remember now, but I brought some water, luckily, and put that in the car. Well, it was still low on water because the time I got the car to the QT across the highway, it was already sitting on 210 again. So went ahead and filled back up. Got some water out of the store, filled it up with water. Mike showed up with a replacement pulley, so I told him I appreciated it. I said, well, we got another one. I said, but we got this one. If this one gives any trouble, I sure appreciated it. He bailed us out on that for sure. But the reason I hadn't really told this story, you may have seen my other video where you could tell I was just whooped. We was in I think it was in West Virginia, and we stopped at a Dairy Queen and got something to eat. It was getting late. I mean, it'd been a long day. That's not the end of the trouble that we had. We had a little trouble in my grandpa's car up around Mooresville on Interstate 77. His alternator belt snapped, and it knocked his AC belt loose. Thankfully, it didn't fall on the road, but his car overheated. So I told him to replace that belt before he left because I knew it was old. He didn't do it, so that was on us. I mean, he should have replaced that belt, but put his alternator air conditioning belt back on, and it was a dual groove pulley, same pulley that just broke on my car. Luckily, his hadn't have rust damage. So we get to going up the road, and I stop and get him a belt, and by that time, it's getting late afternoon, probably 2 o'clock. So we've came 2.5 hours in about 5 hours. So we went to Sonny's and eat there at near NASCAR Tech in Mooresville, and got back on the road. But I noticed my car just wasn't doing right. It was surging. And it was acting similar to the way a friend of mine described his with the Quadrajet carb had done. So it just kept getting worse. By this time, we're in Virginia. We're halfway through Virginia. I can't remember. I think we had just gotten on Interstate 81. Or maybe not quite to 81 yet. But, and it just got worse and worse. It got to the point I couldn't drive the car. I mean, and by this time, we're in a mess. I mean, we're 100 miles outside of our free 150-mile tow from Haggerty. We're halfway to Carlisle and halfway from home. We're about 300 miles in. So maybe 250. And I'm just like, what are we going to do? So I find an exit ramp. I found out if I drove the car around 40 miles an hour, it would stay there. And you could rev the car up fine, whoom, 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 no problem. So I just don't get, this is turning into the trip from, it was a mess. So, but we got to persevere. What we gonna do? So I get on my phone and I find an O'Reilly's. I know O'Reilly's usually has Edelbrock carburetors on the shelf. I have an Edelbrock intake, so it fits Quadrajet and Edelbrock. So I call them up. They got one in stock, and it's about 15 minutes away. So we get my grandpa's Monte Carlo and we go to the O'Reillys. And I want to give a shout out to those guys at that O'Reillys in Virginia there. Can't remember the town. I don't have the receipt in front of me, but they were real helpful. They gave me a 10 or 20% discount, whatever it was, and got back to the car, put the carb on, and we made it the rest of the way to Pennsylvania. We got there around 1 o'clock in the morning, I want to say, and that was officially a trip that I do not want to repeat. Just wanted to share that story. I thought some of y'all might find that interesting. With a pulley explosion, a carb going bad. I've still yet to know what's wrong with that carb. I took it back to where I got it and told them I didn't want it anymore. Just give me I wanted a spacer for my Eldebrock that I bought. I just traded it in. And I took a loss on the carb, but that was okay. Those Quadrajets seem to be having a lot of trouble with accelerator pumps. I'm wondering if that might have just been the problem, but I don't care at this point. It is what it is, but, it ended up being a great trip. The car didn't give any more problems. We had one little hiccup on the way back, and the coil wire, we stopped to eat, and the coil wire had actually, I didn't have it pushed down in there, had fell off, and the car wouldn't start. So after dicking around for about 10 minutes, we see the coil wire is off and plugged it back up. We made it home without incident. I have since had to replace the power steering pump and the water pump on the car since we got back from Pennsylvania, and redetailed the engine block from all the rubber flying from the belts. It just messed up the orange paint. So I believe the pulley exploded and tore the water pump up. Luckily, I had a warranty on that, had that covered. Power steering pump was our own fault. Got in a hurry trying to tighten a belt, crowbar, and pop that seal. I tried to fix it with some sealant. It worked for a while, didn't, started leaking again. So while I had the water pump, the front of the engine tore off again. I replaced the power steering pump and a water pump. Done a little wash down, put everything back together, replaced the hood insulation where the belt's flying off, tore it up. So that was the story of how Carlisle or bust was almost a bust. Thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next time. Keep your pulleys in one piece.